No! I don't want to die!
Silence! Your words are meaningless here.
Right from the start you get a sense that things are different in House of Ashes. As the third outing in Supermassive Games' The Dark Pictures Anthology, there's always the worry of repetition, that the games in the series may blur and merge into one. But House of Ashes differentiates itself from the off with some bold decisions that make this feel like an almost unique entry in a franchise that's become pretty familiar at this point. The result is a game that fans of Man of Medan and Little Hope will feel right at home with, but may also tempt newcomers in too.
Hey, Adam from GodIsAGeek.com here. Sorry to interrupt, but if you wouldn't mind just hitting the big old subscribe button and maybe the bell to notify you of every new video we release, we'd be really grateful. Thank you so much and enjoy the video.
Our story, after a brief but important prologue, takes place in the early 21st century, at the end of the Iraq War. Some new American technology has detected the presence of an underground chemical weapons facility in the Iraqi mountains, and so a squad of Marines is sent in to investigate. Once on the ground though, the search reveals little of actual value, before the squad is ambushed by the local Iraqi Republican Guard. A firefight ensues, disturbing the ground, creating holes that our 5 protagonists and more fall into. Now they find themselves trapped underground in some sort of temple structure with no way of getting back. And to make matters worse, they'll soon realise they're not alone down there. Initially it might sound like the traditional Dark Pictures fare, but closer inspection reveals a different perspective. The protagonists, for example, aren't your usual feeble, naive, easily scared bunch of individuals. No, this time your party is made up of 5 battle-hardened soldiers, used to combat, chains of command, tactical thinking and the general unspeakable horrors of war. And despite their predicament, they're still better equipped than most to deal with their situation, with guns and knives and flashlights, ropes, radios and flares. Their vulnerability comes from a couple of new directions for the series. The first is in the attention to their backstories, their motivations and past interactions. While Supermassive Games has set out character personality before, this often just boils down to several adjectives that differentiate them from the others in the group. In House of Ashes though, attention and consideration are given to what has gone before the events of the here and now, and perhaps more importantly, what happens afterwards. I found myself rooting for various characters' survival, not just because that's the aim of the game, but because I'd caught a glimpse of their life before the tragedy and I wanted to see them reunited with it. It's a simple choice, but it's an effective one. Perhaps the biggest game changer in House of Ashes is what the group finds themselves up against under the mountains of Iraq, or more importantly, how they are shown and the pace with which they're revealed. Previous games in the series have opted for a more secretive approach to their big plot devices, opting to build mystery over time. However, in House of Ashes, the enemy is revealed in the prologue and then again within minutes of the characters finding themselves underground. Rather than just being shown what the enemy is, you're experiencing firsthand what it can do. It makes House of Ashes feel more intense as a result, but due to adrenaline rather than the creepy unknown or just jump scares. And while there are a few shocks in House of Ashes, more often than not, it's a high-octane thriller keeping your heart racing as you struggle against this new foe. The fast-paced action works perfectly with this cast of soldiers as everything is at its limit. But it also makes the divisive QTEs feel much more at home, as the adrenaline from the action on screen flows through you as you attempt to enter the right combinations to progress. For those who still deride them though, House of Ashes offers numerous options to not only turn off the timers as in previous games, but it also offers 3 difficulty settings for those looking for a more casual experience or those who want more of a challenge. The other main hallmark of the Dark Pictures Anthology is the branching narrative, and more importantly how that can lead to characters either living or dying. There are plenty of choices, and the bearings are back to point out key decisions that could impact later story beats. Premonition pictures can be collected to offer a glimpse into the future, although as usual their lack of context can sometimes mislead. The branching narrative of House of Ashes is interesting. There are plenty of choices to make, but like most of Supermassive Games stories, there's a requirement that certain characters make it to the latter stages to ensure the story is told. This was true even in the acclaimed Until Dawn, where at least a couple of characters were around right at the end for the eventual climax. The same is true here, and as such, losing lots of characters early is unlikely, but on the flip side you can lose a key character quite early on too. There are also plenty of unique scenes and even key plot points you might miss with certain decisions. Don't expect full-blown unique chapters, but definitely some plot twists and turns can be discovered or completely missed towards the end of the game depending on your choices and who's left alive. There are also multiple ways for characters to die, and interestingly, without spoiling anything, multiple ways for one character to actually survive the ordeal. It definitely rewards multiple playthroughs, and the ramifications can be quite vast, even if the main beats remain similar. House of Ashes delivers its story well by continually raising the stakes. I had my concerns that with its dark, dingy stone structures it would become a plodding adventure interspersed with some cutscenes and QTEs, but that proved to not be the case, with the locales becoming more surprising and a little bit disturbing as the game went on, and the threat of the enemy feeling more dangerous as the hours went by. In many ways, House of Ashes doesn't feel like a story told by the Anthology's now infamous curator, but easily something that could be transferred to the movie screen. It has high-octane thrills, overbearing, relentless enemies, and a story arc that has more than a whiff of Hollywood about it. It does mean that those looking for a more traditional horror experience could be a little bit disappointed though, especially compared with the more eerie Little Hope or Unnerving Man of Medan. House of Ashes has taken inspiration from films like Predator or Aliens, and that's clear in its direction. It certainly works well, it's just that fans should be aware going in that it feels tonally different from what's gone before. The most surprising thing about House of Ashes is that it doesn't focus on trying to surprise you. It's still mysterious and shocking, but it unashamedly presents its situation up front and then lets you navigate further and further in. By doing away with trying to subvert expectations like previous titles have, it frees itself from some narrative shackles and instead focuses on the overall experience. The result is a very different game, faster paced, with more adrenaline pumping as you smash those QTEs or make the tough calls. This new direction won't be for everyone, and while some of the narrative branches are incredibly interesting, the lack of completely different endings might disappoint some people. Ultimately though, House of Ashes represents something a little bit different for the Dark Picture Anthology, and it's a good thing. For the series to survive, it needs to shake things up, and House of Ashes is a great example of supermassive games doing just that. And for that reason, today I'm going to score it an 8.5 out of 10.
Sir?
The queen bitch you're referring to is his wife.
Hi there, thanks for watching Chris Hyde's review of the Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe, maybe tag that bell icon too so you're kept up to date with everything that we post going forward. And if you want to support us via our Patreon, we really appreciate everything that you guys do for us. There's even a Discord set up that you can jump in and have a chat with the team and our other patrons. In the meantime, I've been Mick Fraser, that was Chris Hyde's review of House of Ashes, and you guys have been lovely. Bye.